Hello, my dear ones. My name is Grandma Martha. I'm 86 years old now, born and raised in the quiet backwoods of Kentucky, United States. I've lived a long life, but some parts of that life were too dark to speak of until now. Today, I'm going to tell you a story that I carried in my chest for over 70 years. And I pray that someone, somewhere, hears it and never lets it happen again. But before I begin, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Grandma's Tales. Every time you listen, you keep these memories alive. And tell me in the comments, my darlings, where are you listening from? Grandma Martha is always happy to know where her little ones are tuning in from. Now sit down and hold on tight, because this story is not an easy one. My 7 brothers, yes, all of them, abused me over and over for years. I was just a child. I didn't understand what was happening at first. I didn't know how to speak out. I didn't even know it was wrong. I just knew it hurt. I just knew I wanted it to stop. But it never stopped. And when I turned 15, my belly began to grow. I didn't tell anyone. I was scared. I didn't even know how to explain it. I thought maybe it would go away on its own. But it didn't. I was pregnant. Pregnant with one of my brother's child. And when they found out, when they saw the signs, they didn't cry. They didn't feel sorry. They didn't say sorry. They wanted to kill me. They cornered me in the barn one night. All 7 of them. Their eyes were cold. One of them held a rope. Another one had a shovel. I heard one of them whisper, "She can't tell nobody." They were going to bury me alive. That's when I decided. I wasn't going to die that night. I wasn't going to let them take me like that. I had to fight. I had to do something. I had to run, scream, bite, scratch, anything. And what I did next changed everything. But I'll come back to that. Because before I tell you how I fought for my life, I want you to know how it all began. Because people think evil looks like monsters. But sometimes evil looks like family. I was born the youngest child of 8. 1 girl, me, and 7 big brothers. My mama died when I was 4 years old. She had gotten real sick. I still remember her last smile, her hand brushing my cheek, and then nothing. She was gone. Daddy never talked about it. He buried her in the backyard under the big walnut tree and never looked back. He started drinking. Hard. And my brothers? Well, they were already rough boys. Wild, mean, full of anger. With Mama gone, and Daddy always drunk or gone for days, they ruled the house. I was left alone with them most nights. At first, it was small things. They teased me, made me sleep on the floor, took my food, pulled my hair. I thought that was normal. I thought maybe that's what little sisters had to go through. But when I turned 9, the teasing stopped. And something darker began. One night, I was sleeping in the corner of the attic room when my oldest brother, Bobby, came in. He smelled like smoke and sweat. He told me to get up. I was sleepy. I said no. He dragged me anyway. That was the first time. After that, it happened again. And again. Then the others joined in. One by one. I remember staring at the wooden beams above me, counting them to keep from screaming. 5 beams. That's how I survived. By counting. I tried to tell Daddy once. But when I opened my mouth, my voice vanished. The fear was too big. Bobby saw me trying to talk. That night, he burned my favorite doll in front of me and said, "Tell anybody and you'll be next." I believed him. So I stayed quiet. Years passed like that. Pain became a routine. I stopped looking people in the eyes. I stopped singing. I stopped smiling. Even the neighbors said, "That girl always looks haunted." But no one ever asked why. When I turned 13, I started hiding in the chicken coop at night just to escape. But they always found me. And then came the day I missed my period. At first, I didn't think much of it. But then my belly started to grow. I was scared to look at it. Scared to touch it. I wrapped myself in blankets and stayed hidden in the shed for hours, praying it would go away. But it didn't. By the time I was 15, the bump was too big to hide. One of my brothers, Jacob, saw me washing up by the river and noticed it. He ran to tell the others. That night, they held a meeting in the barn. I wasn't invited, but I heard the voices, the yelling, the fear in their tones. They knew. And they were scared, not because they cared about me, but because they were worried about getting caught. She'll talk, one said. We'll all hang, said another. She's gonna ruin this family. That's when they planned it. They'd get rid of me before anyone found out. So a few nights later, they told me to come help them clean out the barn. It was late. The moon was full. I should have known something was wrong, but part of me still hoped they had a bit of kindness left. They didn't. When I stepped inside, I saw Bobby holding a rope. Jacob had a shovel. David closed the barn door and locked it. My legs went weak. I begged. I cried. Please, I said. I won't tell. I promise. But they didn't listen. Jacob raised the shovel. And that's when I decided I was not going to let them bury me that night. As Jacob lifted the shovel and Bobby tightened the rope in his hands, something inside me snapped. I wasn't going to beg again. I wasn't going to cry again. My voice, the one I had lost for years, came back in a single scream, loud and sharp like a wounded animal. That scream must have shaken the heavens, because the horses in the nearby pen started kicking. The old barn door creaked in the wind, and the oil lamp in the corner flickered, sending shadows crawling over the wooden walls. I didn't wait. I turned and ran through the side of the barn, crashing through a stack of old hay bales and scraping my arms on broken wood. My heart pounded in my chest like a wild drum. I could hear them yelling behind me, 7 brothers, all stronger and faster than me. But I ran like fire was at my heels. The night was cold. My feet were bare. I cut myself on sharp rocks and branches, but I didn't stop. I ran through the trees, down toward the river, praying I'd disappear into the darkness. I knew the woods better than they did. I used to hide there when the beatings got bad. I knew every stump, every fallen tree, every dip in the land. Still, they were close. I could hear their heavy boots crunching behind me, shouting my name like it meant something good. Martha, get back here. You're making it worse. If we catch you, you'll wish we didn't. I kept running. My breath burned. My side ached. But I kept running until I found the hollow log by the stream, the one Mama used to sit on before she passed. I crawled inside, curled up like a scared kitten, and held my breath. I don't know how long I stayed there. Minutes. Hours. But eventually, their voices faded. And I was alone. For the first time in years, I was truly alone, and I was alive. I waited until sunrise before crawling out of that log. The sky was still purple, and mist hung low over the grass. My nightgown was torn. My feet were blistered. My hands shook like leaves in the wind. I walked slowly back to the house, not because I was going back to them, but because I had no other place to go. I couldn't go to the police. What would I say? That my 7 brothers had been abusing me for years and now wanted to kill me because I was pregnant? Who would believe me? We lived far from town. We didn't go to school. We didn't have friends. No one even knew I existed. Still, I went into the house quietly, like a ghost, and snuck into the kitchen to grab food. A slice of bread. A jar of pickles. I stuffed them in a rag, snuck out again, and made my way back to the woods. That was my life for the next 2 days, hiding in the forest, drinking river water, sleeping under trees, and eating scraps. I thought I was free, but I was wrong. On the 3rd night, I returned to the house again, only to sneak inside and get warm clothes. It was starting to rain, and the wind was sharp. I waited until the lights were out, then crawled through the back window of the laundry room. That's when I heard the voice. Where you been, baby sister? It was Bobby. He had been waiting in the shadows. Before I could turn and run, he grabbed my wrist and yanked me inside. The door slammed behind me, and I was back in the nightmare. He dragged me into the living room. The others were already there: Jacob, David, Thomas, Luke, James, and Will. All 7. Sitting like wolves around the fire. They hadn't been sleeping. They were waiting. And their eyes told me everything. They were going to finish what they started. You shouldn't have run, Jacob said. Now we gotta make sure you don't run again. I trembled. My stomach was beginning to show now. A small round bump. I held it gently, trying to protect the tiny life inside me. I don't know where the strength came from, but I screamed again. I twisted, bit Bobby's hand, kicked him in the knee. I was wild. I was angry. I was done being quiet. I managed to run to the front door, but Luke tackled me before I could get it open. We fell hard. My head hit the floor. The room spun. I screamed again, but no one was coming. No one ever came. They dragged me down into the cellar and locked the door behind me. And that's where I stayed. No food, no light, no hope. They only opened the door once a day to throw down a crust of bread, a tin of water, and to check if I was still breathing. Days passed, then weeks. My belly grew, and I began to feel the baby move. A small flutter, a little kick. That tiny life inside me became my only friend, my only reason to keep breathing. I talked to it every day.
I'm sorry, you whispered.
I didn't mean for you to come into such a bad world, but I promise I'll protect you. I'll get us out. I'll find a way.
But I didn't know how.
And just when I started to lose hope, something happened. One night, I heard shouting upstairs, loud voices, a car engine, then silence, then a knock, and another, then a voice, a woman's voice. Hello? Anyone home? I pressed my ear to the ceiling. I couldn't hear clearly, but it sounded like someone was at the front door. A visitor, maybe a neighbor, maybe someone passing by. My heart jumped. This was it. My chance. I started banging on the cellar door with the metal tin. I banged and screamed, louder than I ever had before. I screamed until my throat was raw, and for a moment there was silence. Then footsteps, and the lock turning. I stepped back, heart racing, hands shaking. And then the door creaked open. A beam of light hit my eyes. But it wasn't the neighbor. It wasn't help. It was Jacob. And he wasn't smiling. In his hand was a rifle. And in his eyes was the look of a boy who had made a decision he couldn't take back. He stood there, right at the top of the cellar stairs, Jacob, my third oldest brother. He wasn't wearing his usual cap. His hair looked wild and messy, like he hadn't slept for days. His boots were muddy. But I didn't care about any of that. All I could see, all I could think about was the rifle he held in his hand. I froze. He didn't blink. I thought it was the end. You had to scream, didn't you? He muttered, voice low and cold. I opened my mouth to plead, but my throat felt like sandpaper. I hadn't spoken to a real person in so long, only whispered to the baby in my belly. My lips moved, but nothing came out. I was gonna let you rot down there, Jacob continued, stepping down one slow stair at a time, the wood creaking under his boots. Keep you hidden till it was over. But now someone came knocking, and you just couldn't stay quiet. I backed away until my spine hit the stone wall. He raised the rifle slowly. My breath caught in my chest. Please, I whispered. Please don't. His fingers gripped the gun tighter. His face didn't look like Jacob anymore. He looked like something possessed. His mouth twitched. His eyes flicked to my belly. She's got a bump now, he said, like he was talking to himself. What if they find out? What if somebody sees? I didn't say anything. I didn't even move. I just stared at him, my whole body trembling like a leaf in the wind. He took another step closer. You messed everything up, Martha. You're gonna ruin us. He raised the gun to my chest. And then, Jacob. It was Bobby's voice, booming from upstairs. We got trouble. Jacob flinched. He looked over his shoulder, hesitated, then cursed under his breath and turned around. He slammed the cellar door shut, and the lock clicked again. But I was still alive. I sank to the floor and held my belly. I whispered, "It's not over. Mama's gonna find a way." That night, I didn't sleep. I couldn't. Something was happening upstairs. I could hear arguing.
Fast footsteps.
Someone opened and shut the front door more than once. I heard an engine. Then silence again. I didn't know what was going on, but I knew one thing. They were nervous. And when evil men get nervous, they do stupid things. 2 more days passed. No food. Just water. My belly was growing heavier. My back ached. The floor was cold. I tried to stand up often to stretch. But I was weak. Too weak. I started to lose track of time. My thoughts began to drift. I started having dreams while awake. Dreams of Mama holding my hand. Dreams of me and the baby living in a small cabin, safe, far from here. But reality always came back when the rats scurried across the floor. Then came the worst moment. I woke up one night in sharp pain. Not a small cramp. Not a little twist. Real pain. Deep and hard. Like my stomach was being torn apart. I gasped and doubled over. "No, no, please not now," I whispered, rocking myself back and forth. I was bleeding. I reached down and felt the sticky wetness. Tears welled up in my eyes. "Not now. Not here. Not like this." I screamed. Not loud like before, but in pain. It didn't stop. The cramps came every few minutes. I knew what was happening. The baby was coming early. Too early. I wasn't ready. My body wasn't ready. The baby wasn't ready. But there was no stopping it. I laid on the cold floor, sobbing. Hours passed. Or maybe minutes. I couldn't tell anymore. Then suddenly, silence broke. I heard the cellar lock turn again. I didn't have the strength to move. The door opened, and a dim light poured in.
It wasn't Jacob this time.
It was James. My youngest brother. He had always been the quiet one. The one who stood behind the others. He was only a year older than me. He stared at me for a long moment. Then his eyes went wide. "Oh my God," he whispered. "She's having it." He dropped the flashlight and ran. I couldn't tell if he was running from me or for help. But minutes later, the others came.
Bobby, Luke, Thomas.
All of them shouting. "She's bleeding too much. She's gonna die in there. What do we do? She'll take the baby with her. She'll talk if we take her anywhere." I was only half awake, but I heard them argue. Then I felt arms around me. Someone lifted me. My vision blurred, but I saw trees above me.
Stars.
The night sky. Then a truck engine. They were taking me somewhere. I thought maybe they'd finally decided to help. I was wrong. They were taking me to the creek. The same one where Daddy buried Mama's dead cows. The same place no one ever went anymore. That's when I realized. They weren't going to help me give birth. They were going to finish what Jacob started. Even if I had their baby in my arms, they still wanted me gone. I tried to fight. I screamed. But my voice was weak. My body was weak. I felt myself slipping again. Fading. Then something snapped. Not in me, but in James. As Bobby and Thomas dragged me out of the truck, James yelled, "Stop."
They paused.
"What the hell, James?" Bobby barked. "Get out of the way." "No," James said, stepping in front of them. "This ain't right. We can't kill her. She's gonna ruin all of us." Luke snapped. "She already did." "She's our sister," James said quietly. There was silence. And then Bobby hit him. Hard. James fell to the dirt. I screamed again. The pain in my belly was worse now. Unbearable. I cried out for Mama, for anyone, for God. "Help me." And then something happened that none of them expected. A pair of headlights appeared. A car. It stopped on the road just above the creek. The brothers froze. The driver's side door opened, and a voice shouted, "Hey, what's going on down there?" It was a man. A stranger. Bobby panicked. "Grab her. Let's go." "No," James shouted, jumping up. I saw him tackle Bobby. Thomas grabbed the rifle. The man from the road began to run toward us. Everything became a blur. Fists flying. Yelling. My head spinning. Then a gunshot. Just one. Loud. Echoing. Then everything went quiet. Too quiet. I couldn't see who was shot. I tried to stay awake. Try to focus. But everything was spinning too fast. The baby. The blood. The creek. The brothers. The man. And then darkness. When I woke up, everything around me was white. The walls. The sheets. The light overhead. For a moment, I thought I was dead. Maybe heaven had finally taken pity on me. Maybe God had heard me screaming from that cold, dirty creek and pulled me out of my pain. But then I blinked. The light above buzzed. A soft beeping echoed in the background. I turned my head slowly and saw tubes running from my arms. It was a hospital. I was alive.
Barely.
My throat was dry, and every part of my body ached. My belly felt empty. Too empty. My heart began to pound.
The baby.
Where was my baby? I tried to sit up, but my body was too weak. A nurse came rushing in calling for a doctor. Another woman entered, someone in uniform. She had a notepad and a badge clipped to her shirt. "Sweetheart," the nurse said softly, placing a hand on my arm. "You're safe. You're in the county hospital. You've been through a lot. Just rest for now."
But I didn't want to rest.
I wanted to know. My mouth opened, dry as sandpaper. "My baby?" The nurse's smile faded. The woman in uniform stepped forward. "You lost a lot of blood," she said gently. "You were in very bad shape when you were brought in. The baby didn't make it." The words hit me like a knife to the chest.
No. No, no, no.
I turned my face away from them and stared at the wall. A single tear rolled down my cheek. She, he, they was all I had. That little life growing inside me was the only thing that had kept me breathing through all the pain. The only reason I didn't give up in that dark cellar. And now?
Gone.
I didn't scream. I didn't cry out. I just lay there, silent, feeling like a hollow shell. The woman with the badge stepped closer again. "My name's Officer Daniels," she said. "I need to ask you a few questions, but only when you're ready." I didn't respond. "You were brought here by a man named George." She paused. "He said he was driving past the creek when he saw a group of boys trying to hurt a girl."
He stopped and intervened.
"There was a gun. A shot was fired." I closed my eyes. The gunshot. "James," I whispered. "Is that your brother?" I nodded. She wrote something in her notepad. "One of your brothers was shot. He's stable. The others ran before backup arrived. George stayed with you until the ambulance came."
She paused again.
"We've been trying to piece things together. George said you were screaming something about being held against your will, that you were pregnant."
I didn't say anything.
Because how do you start that kind of story? How do you look someone in the eyes and say, "My 7 brothers took turns hurting me for years. Then when I got pregnant, they tried to kill me"?
How?
I just lay there quiet. "Is it true?" she finally asked. "Did your brothers hurt you?" I didn't nod. I didn't shake my head. But tears ran down both sides of my face. And that was all the answer she needed. The next few days passed in a blur. Doctors poked and prodded. Nurses brought soup I couldn't eat. The pain in my belly came and went in waves. I could barely sleep. Nightmares followed me even with my eyes open. Sometimes I'd hear footsteps in the hallway and think it was Bobby. Sometimes I'd close my eyes and feel the cellar walls around me again. Other times I'd whisper lullabies to a baby that was no longer in my womb. Then one morning, I woke up to voices outside my room. I heard Officer Daniels speaking with someone. "She's just a girl. Barely 15. Do we have any family to contact?" We tried. The father's long gone. Mother passed years ago. No close relatives. "So what happens now?" There was silence. Then Daniels said, "She'll become a ward of the state until we figure something out." I didn't want to go to an orphanage. I didn't want to be handed over to strangers. But I also didn't want to go back home. Not that the house ever felt like home. Later that day, Daniels came in with another woman. This one had kind eyes and a warm smile. "This is Mrs. Howard," Officer Daniels said. "She runs a group home outside town. Just girls. Safe place. She'd like to help you." Mrs. Howard sat beside me. "You don't have to speak now, darling. I just want you to know you're not alone anymore. We'll get you somewhere warm, safe, and quiet. Somewhere you can breathe again." I looked at her. She wasn't like the women back home. Her hands weren't rough. Her eyes didn't judge. She looked like someone who had seen pain and chose to stop it rather than ignore it. So I nodded. Just once.
And that was enough.
2 days later, I was discharged from the hospital and taken to the group home. It was a simple, old farmhouse turned shelter. 5 girls already lived there, each one with her own story, her own sadness. They welcomed me with gentle smiles. They didn't ask questions. They just let me be. For the first time in forever, I had my own bed, my own blanket, a window with sunlight,
Books.
a small radio.
And peace.
Mrs. Howard didn't pressure me to talk. She just made sure I had food and clean clothes and quiet time. But the peace didn't last long. Because one afternoon, about 3 weeks after I arrived, Officer Daniels came to visit. She sat me down in the small reading room and told me the news. They arrested Bobby, Luke, and Thomas. I swallowed hard. They were hiding out in a relative's cabin outside the county. Someone called in a tip. They'll face charges. I said nothing, but my heart beat a little louder. David and Will are still on the run, she continued. We think they may have crossed state lines. My heart dropped again. They're dangerous, Martha, and we're doing everything we can to find them. I nodded. Then she handed me a paper. It was a subpoena. They're asking you to testify. I stared at it. The letters blurred on the page. I couldn't breathe. Testify? In court? Stand in front of everyone and speak the things I had kept buried for years? I wasn't ready, but I didn't say no. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking, what if they found me again? What if David and Will were waiting outside the shelter? What if they had followed me from a hospital? What if they came with ropes and shovels again? My hands shook as I turned off the lamp and hid under the covers. I didn't want to be scared forever. But fear had lived in me for too long. The next morning, a letter arrived. No name, no return address. Just my name on the front. Inside was a piece of paper with 2 words written in sharp, ugly letters. We know. My heart stopped. The letter slipped from my fingers. Mrs. Howard found me an hour later, shaking in the closet. She sat with me, held me, and said we would call Officer Daniels immediately. But all I could hear in my head was, they know. They know where I am. They're coming. They want to finish what they started. I didn't sleep for 3 nights after that letter. The words, we know, kept echoing in my mind like a drumbeat I couldn't silence. Every creak in the house, every gust of wind outside the window, every footstep in the hallway sent my heart into a panic. I was sure they were close, David and Will. The 2 brothers who had escaped. The 2 who hadn't been caught yet. They knew where I was.
How?
Who told them? Did they follow me from a hospital? Did someone at the courthouse leak my name? Did one of the other girls in the shelter tell a friend, who told a cousin who knew one of them? I didn't know. All I knew was that the fear I thought I'd left behind had returned, and this time, it was worse. Because now I wasn't just scared for myself. I was scared for the other girls in the shelter. For Mrs. Howard. For the peace I had started to build. And just like that, the peace was gone. Officer Daniels came the next morning, the letter clutched in her hand inside a plastic bag. This is serious, she told me as she sat across from me in the little meeting room at the shelter. We're increasing security around the building. Nobody goes out alone. We're installing a new lock on the back entrance. And I'm putting in a request for temporary witness protection. Witness protection? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Daniels nodded.
Yes.
A new name, new school, new place to live, until we can be sure you're safe and the rest of your brothers are in custody. It should have made me feel better. It didn't, because I knew my brothers. They didn't quit, especially David. He was the coldest, the meanest, the most careful. He never raised his voice, never laughed. But when he hurt me, he always made sure it didn't leave a mark where anyone could see. He was smart. If anyone could find me, it was him. 2 days later, Mrs. Howard packed a small suitcase for me. 1 pair of jeans, 2 shirts, a toothbrush, and a little worn-out journal she'd given me to write in. She kissed my forehead and told me she'd pray for me every night. They're taking you to a safe house, she said. You'll be okay. I nodded, but my throat burned with tears. I didn't want to leave. This place, as small and quiet as it was, felt like the only good thing I'd had in a long time. But I understood. Sometimes, running isn't weakness. It's survival. Officer Daniels drove me out of town in an unmarked car. We took back roads. Switched highways twice. She didn't say where we were going, only that it was a house owned by the state, used for cases like mine. We arrived at night. The house was small and hidden in the woods, surrounded by tall trees and silence. It had a porch swing, peeling white paint, and a long gravel driveway that no one could drive up without being heard from inside. A woman named Miss Ann greeted me. She looked like someone's grandma, short, silver hair, thick glasses, and a voice that sounded like warm soup on a cold day.
"Come in, sugar," she said.
"You're safe now." For a while, I believed her. I settled into a small room upstairs. It had a narrow bed, a dresser, and a tiny window that looked out over the woods. I spent most of my time reading or writing in the journal Mrs. Howard gave me. But something still didn't feel right. Every time a bird fluttered past the window, I jumped. Every time the phone rang downstairs, my stomach twisted. One night, I dreamed of the creek again, of the gunshot, of James lying still in the dirt, of David's cold eyes staring right into mine. I woke up in a sweat. Miss Ann knocked gently on the door. "You okay, honey?" "I just had a dream," I said. She brought me warm milk and stayed until I calmed down. "You're doing so well," she said. "You're a brave girl." But brave didn't feel like the right word. Scared girls don't feel brave. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of something strange, metal scraping against metal. I sat up slowly and looked toward the window. There was a man outside. A shadow.
Tall.
Broad shoulders. A baseball cap pulled down low. He was standing at the edge of the woods, watching the house. My breath stopped. I ducked low beneath the window and crawled to the door. "Miss Ann," I whispered as I hurried downstairs. She was in the kitchen, pouring coffee. "There's someone outside," I said. She put down the pot quickly and walked with me to the front window. But when we looked, he was gone. "Are you sure?" she asked. "Yes," I whispered. "I saw him." Miss Ann called Daniels immediately. That night, Daniels returned and parked a patrol car nearby. Another officer sat in the car through the night, watching, waiting. But nothing happened. Maybe I imagined it, I thought. Maybe it was a shadow from a tree or a hunter passing by. But deep down, I knew. It was him. David. And he wasn't just watching. He was planning. A week passed. Nothing strange. No letters. No shadows. Then one night, Miss Ann went into town for groceries. She told me to keep the doors locked and call her if I needed anything. I was home alone for just 2 hours. But that was enough. At first, everything seemed normal. I made a peanut butter sandwich, sat on the couch, and turned on the tiny TV in the corner. Then the phone rang. I picked it up slowly. "Hello?" No answer. "Miss Ann?" I asked. Still nothing. Then a voice came through. A whisper. "I told you we know." I dropped the phone. My heart pounded in my ears. I locked the front door, then ran and locked the back. I closed all the curtains and turned off the lights. Then I sat on the floor, shaking, knees pulled to my chest. They found me. Again. Minutes later, the front porch creaked. I crawled to the window and peeked through the side. A package sat on the porch, wrapped in brown paper. No name. I didn't open the door. Instead, I called Officer Daniels and told her everything. She told me to stay hidden and that she was on her way. 20 minutes later, she arrived with another officer. They opened the package on the porch carefully. Inside was a photo.
A picture of me.
Standing in the hospital window. Looking out. The picture had been taken from outside, from the parking lot. My skin went cold. He had been watching me for weeks. Daniels brought me inside. "We're moving you again," she said.
Now.
"But where?"
"Somewhere far," she said.
"And this time, we're changing your name." That night, I packed again. But before we could leave, one last thing happened. Around midnight, the power went out. Every light, every sound.
Gone.
The house was swallowed in black. And then, a knock on the door. Not loud. Just 3 soft taps. I clung to Miss N's arm as Daniels drew her weapon and slowly walked to the door. Another knock. This time harder. Daniels shouted, "Police! Step away from the house." Silence. Then a crash. The back window shattered. "Go upstairs," Daniels shouted at us.
Now.
We ran. Up the stairs. Down the hall. Into the bedroom. Miss N locked the door. We huddled by the dresser. I heard footsteps in the house below. 1 pair. 2 pairs. And a voice.
Familiar. Cold.
"You thought you could hide from us?" It was David. The sound of his voice turned my blood to ice. "You thought you could hide from us?" That voice, David's voice, wasn't loud or angry. It was calm, still, cold like the steel edge of a knife. It echoed up the stairs as he walked through the house slowly, like he had all the time in the world, like he knew we had nowhere to run. I pressed my back against the dresser, clutching Miss N's hand so tight I could feel her pulse racing. Her other hand held the cordless phone, trembling as she whispered to the emergency dispatcher. "He's in the house," she said, barely louder than her breath. 2 men. 1 is armed. Send backup. Please hurry. We heard glass crunching as boots moved across the floor below. "Come on out, little sister," David said again. "Let's make this easy. It's just me and Will. You remember Will, don't you? He misses you. We all do." Miss N looked at me with panic in her eyes. "I shouldn't have left you alone earlier," she whispered. "I'm so sorry, baby." "It's not your fault," I said, my voice cracking. It wasn't anyone's fault but theirs. And now they were here. Again. I could hear doors opening and slamming downstairs.
Drawers being yanked.
Furniture scraping. They were searching every room. Getting closer. Officer Daniels had told us not to open the bedroom window unless we absolutely had to. It was old, jammed, and took effort to budge. But now I didn't care if I had to break it with my bare hands. I grabbed the wooden chair by the desk and struck the window. Nothing. I hit it again. Still nothing. The 3rd time, the glass finally cracked. Miss N helped me push the jagged shards outward. The cold night air rushed in. "You go first," she said, grabbing my arm.
No.
"You're not staying behind." "I'm old, Martha."
I'll only slow you down.
"You're not staying." We both climbed halfway out the window when we heard footsteps on the stairs.
Fast. Hard.
Coming up. We froze.
They were close now.
Only seconds away. Miss N pushed me out the window. I fell onto the grass below, scraped my elbow, but I didn't stop. I turned back just in time to see her climbing through. Then,
bang!
The bedroom door burst open. Will appeared in the doorway, wild-eyed and sweating, with a flashlight in one hand and something shiny in the other. "Stop," he shouted. Miss N turned. He lunged toward her. I screamed, but she kicked backward with surprising force, catching him right in the chest. He stumbled. She tumbled out and landed beside me. We ran. The woods behind the house were dark, filled with branches and thorns. I didn't care. I kept running.
So, did she?
Somewhere behind us, we heard shouting. "Get back here. Don't let them get away." Twigs snapped behind us. They were chasing us through the trees like wild dogs. "Keep going." Miss N gasped. I could barely breathe. The sharp branches scratched my arms and legs. My feet slipped in the mud. But we didn't stop. We pushed deeper into the forest, hoping they wouldn't be able to see us in the dark. Then I heard sirens. In the distance. Getting closer. I wanted to cry with relief. They were coming. Help was finally coming. But that only made David and Will more desperate. They shouted louder. I turned just in time to see David through the trees. He had a pistol in his hand, and he was pointing it right at me. I screamed and ducked behind a tree. A shot rang out.
Bang!
The bark above my head exploded. Miss N pulled me behind a rock. "Don't move," she whispered. "Stay low." Another shot.
Bang!
Then more sirens. Brakes screeched on the road near the house.
Doors slammed.
Officers began shouting. Police! Drop your weapon. Everything happened so fast. I peeked over the rock and saw David sprinting in the other direction, deeper into the woods. Will wasn't with him. Then more gunshots. Lights flashed through the trees. I couldn't see what happened next, only heard shouting, running, a scuffle, then silence. Then finally, clear. We waited. A flashlight beam found us. Officer Daniels herself emerged from the trees. Martha, are you okay? I couldn't even answer. I just collapsed into her arms, sobbing. Miss, and held my other hand. They took us back to the house. EMTs checked our wounds. Scratches. Bruises. Exhaustion. I asked, voice barely audible. Did they get them? Daniels looked me in the eye. Will is in custody. David escaped into the forest. But we'll find him. I shook my head.
No.
You won't. He always hides. He always knows how.
She squeezed my hand.
We will this time. But I didn't believe her.
Not really.
They had found me every single time before. Why would this be different? For the next 2 weeks, I stayed in a secure facility outside the state. It was a cold building with metal doors, surveillance cameras, and no windows in the rooms. They said it was for my safety. I believed them, but it didn't feel like safety. It felt like prison. Except this time, I wasn't being punished. I was being protected. They gave me a therapist. I barely spoke. They gave me food. I barely ate. They gave me a new name. I barely remembered my old one anymore. All I could think about was him, David.
Still out there.
Still looking. Still breathing. Then one day they brought me news. An officer knocked on my door and handed me a printed report. David's face was on it. A wanted poster. FBI now involved, the officer said. He's officially a fugitive. We've sent his profile to every county across state lines. Someone will spot him. It's only a matter of time. I took the paper, looked at it, and for the first time in a long time, something deep inside me stirred. It wasn't fear. It was something else. Something sharper. Something stronger. I was tired of running. Tired of hiding. Tired of letting him control every breath I took. He had taken everything from me, my childhood, my body, my baby, my peace. But not anymore. That night, I stood in front of the mirror, stared at the girl in the reflection. I barely recognized her.
Thin. Pale.
Eyes haunted. But she was still alive. I picked up the paper again, looked into David's eyes, and whispered, "Your time is up." The next morning, I told Officer Daniels I wanted to testify. I could see the surprise in her face, maybe even a little worry, but she didn't question it. She simply nodded and said, "You're sure?" I nodded. "I'm not running anymore." We set the date. It would be a closed court hearing for my safety. Will was already in custody and would face trial. The charges?
Kidnapping.
Assault. Attempted murder. Rape. Conspiracy. And because I was a minor during most of it, and because there was a baby involved, the case had turned federal. It was bigger now. It meant more people watching. More people caring. It meant David's shadow couldn't follow me forever. But even as I prepared to testify, he was still out there. And that haunted me every time I lay in bed. Still, I practiced. Day after day, Officer Daniels and a counselor helped me get my words right. I had to relive every moment. From the first time it happened, when I was only 10 and too scared to understand, to the last night by the creek, bleeding and praying for God to end it. Each detail hurt like a knife. But every word I said aloud took the blade out of my back and placed it into theirs. 2 weeks before the trial, something happened. I was sitting at the facility window, which had one-way glass, and I saw a black truck drive past slowly. It matched the one David used to drive. My stomach dropped, but it kept moving. Still, I didn't sleep that night. 3 days later, we got the call. David had been spotted. Not just anywhere. He was only 2 towns away. A grocery clerk noticed him in a corner store, buying canned beans and sleeping pills. She saw the wanted poster behind the counter, recognized his cold eyes, and called 911. But by the time officers arrived, he was gone. Daniel sat with me after the report came in. "We think he's desperate," she said. "He knows it's over." "Desperate is when he's most dangerous," I whispered. She nodded.
We're moving you again.
"Just until trial."
No.
She blinked. "Martha, I'm done running. He wants me afraid. He wants me silent. But I'm not a little girl anymore.
I'm testifying.
And if he wants to stop me, he'll have to walk into that courtroom and try." Daniel stared at me for a long time. Then she said, "Okay." The day of the hearing came. I wore a pale blue blouse Mrs. Howard had mailed to me with a note that said, "You've always had the heart of a lion. Today, the world will see it too." The courtroom was small and empty except for the judge, the legal teams, a few security officers, and Will, sitting behind a glass panel in cuffs and an orange jumpsuit. He didn't look like a monster anymore. He looked small. But I didn't flinch. I took the stand. They asked me everything. And I answered. I told them what happened, how it started, what my brothers did, how they laughed, how they told me it was family stuff, how they made me feel dirty, worthless, scared. I told them about the night I found out I was pregnant, the way they locked me in the cellar, the way Jacob tried to shoot me, how James, my only brother with a heart, was the reason I survived. Then I told them about the creek, about the baby I lost, and how will help try to finish me off. The judge listened quietly. The court reporter typed every word. I didn't cry. Not once. Because I'd cried enough. I was done letting my tears be their victory. After my testimony, I stepped down. As I walked past the glass where Will sat, I looked him straight in the eye. He looked away. Coward. The judge thanked me. The court adjourned for the day. And just as we were leaving, chaos broke loose. A man burst into the building through the back hallway. He shoved past an officer. He was dressed like a janitor, hat pulled low, overalls, a mop bucket to distract. But I knew that face, even under the disguise. David. He was there. He had come to finish it. People screamed. Officers rushed. Daniels pushed me down behind a bench. But he didn't come for me right away. He was trying to reach Will.
Why?
I didn't know. Maybe to silence him. Maybe to kill him for getting caught. Or maybe to die beside him. An officer yelled, "Drop your weapon." David pulled something from his coat. A flash. A small, silver object. He raised it. And then, bang. He fell to the floor. Shot clean through the chest. Not by an officer, but by Officer Daniels. She stood firm, pistol still raised, breath shaking. David gasped, coughed once, then stilled. It was over.
For real this time.
I visited James in the hospital weeks later. He survived the creek after all. He was the only one I could forgive. The only one who had fought to protect me. When he saw me, he cried. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I should have done more." "You did enough," I said. "You saved me." We sat in silence for a long while. He asked about the baby. I told him everything. When I left, I placed a tiny daisy on the grave behind the new shelter Mrs. Howard built in town for girls like me. The headstone read, "To the child I never met.
You saved me.
And I'll never stop fighting for you." Now I tell my story to anyone who will listen, to girls who feel trapped, to children who think no one will believe them, to women who carry shame that was never theirs. And to the world, I say this. You can break a girl, but you cannot silence a soul. I was a victim once.
But now,
I'm a survivor, a fighter, a voice for the voiceless. And this grandma, she took her revenge. By living, by telling, and by never staying silent again.